Allen Lund Company wishes all the owner-operators out there a Happy New Year. OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
President-elect Trump's pick to lead DOT appeared before the Senate on Wednesday for his confirmation hearing. We cover Sean Duffy's testimony, how it will affect trucking, and more of today's news. 2 truckers are suing the state of Minnesota, claiming the state is violating their Second Amendment rights by not recognizing their concealed carry permits from their home states. We'll have a report. What is factoring? When should a trucker use it? And what are the potential upsides and downsides? Tom Crowley and Aron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department join us with some insight. And finally, the spot market is expected to heat up this year. Brent Hutto of Truckstop says overall freight market rates are expected to increase throughout 2025. And now, here's Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. We begin with big news out of California, which is hitting pause on its Advanced Clean Fleets rule. The California Air Resources Board said it has withdrawn its request that the U.S. government give it a waiver to implement emissions rules for heavy trucks that are stricter than federal regulations. The reason? The incoming Trump administration, which was all but certain to deny them or roll them back entirely. The Environmental Protection Agency had already received the request but had yet to approve it. Under the proposed rule, California would have banned the sale of new diesel-powered semis and buses by the year 2036, phased in over time. In a statement, CARB said it was disappointed the EPA didn't act sooner and is currently weighing its options moving forward. Over to Capitol Hill now and the nomination hearing of Sean Duffy to lead the Department of Transportation. The former congressman from Wisconsin appeared before the Senate Committee on Transportation on Wednesday and faced a series of questions. In his opening remarks, Duffy committed to safety.
Whether driving, flying, or traveling by train, no federal agency impacts Americans' daily lives and loved ones more than the Department of Transportation. I'm honored to have the trust of President Trump and hopefully this body to lead such an important segment of our economy. Transportation influences how long it takes to get home to our loved ones, and improving its safety and efficiency directly enhances every single American's life.
Duffy appears well on track for confirmation. Senators from both sides of the aisle have expressed support for his nomination, and there were no contentious exchanges of note during Wednesday's hearing. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is among the many groups supporting him as well, pointing to his previous support for small business truckers. OOIDA said it believes Duffy is well suited to lead the U.S. Department of Transportation. In a letter to Senate leaders signed by OOIDA President Todd Spencer, the association expressed strong support for Duffy, pointing to his previous support for small business truckers. When Duffy served in the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2019, he was one of 25 members who supported OOIDA's request for qualified small business truckers to be exempt from the electronic logging device mandate. Duffy signed a letter to FMCSA expressing his support for the OOIDA petition. Wednesday was a busy day on Capitol Hill as the new Congress gets to work ahead of President-elect Trump's inauguration on Monday. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee held a hearing on Wednesday on the state of the nation's transportation system. There was plenty to talk about, including action to reauthorize the nation's surface transportation programs. On a macro level, they are issues that relate to a trucker's workspace, the nation's interstate system, its roads and bridges, and infrastructure in general. But there were also a few trucking-specific topics up for discussion, namely truck parking, which came up a couple of times. Representative Mike Bost of Illinois, who comes from a trucking background, made it clear his focus on getting a truck parking bill passed and signed into law remains strong. Take, for example, this exchange with Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry.
You know, I'm sure all of you know by now there's a national shortage of truck parking. It was mentioned in one of your testimonies. The Department of Transportation study the issue found that the truck parking shortages in every state, region, country, and problems that continues to get worse. Recent estimates are right now that for every truck every 11 trucks on the road, there's one parking spot place. This puts drivers in a no-win situation. For those of you that don't know, I came from a family trucking business. I tell people I ran it for 10 years. I loved it for 8. And Mr. Collins also deals with the same business. But the drivers, like I said, are in a no-win situation. And then I've worked ever since I've been here to try to direct money towards trucking, for parking for trucks. Governor Landry, the Port of New Orleans is one of the nation's largest cargo terminals, with 1,000 trucks going in and out of the port each and every day. How familiar are you with the truck parking shortage issue in your state? And if the federal government had a dedicated pot of money to expand parking capacity to help address issues, do you think that's something that the states and the local municipalities in Louisiana would be interested in?
Yes, I am very keenly aware of the problems we have down at the Port of Orleans in regards to trucking. We've got a lot of vehicles, as you said, going in and out just to bring goods and services, either for export or those coming in, on top of the amount of tourists that are coming in. Anything that we can do to holistically look at a way to improve our surface transportation and get the movement of goods and services while addressing the needs of those truck drivers as well, I certainly am more than happy to work with you all.
In the last Congress, Representative Bost introduced the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, which would have allocated hundreds of millions of dollars for free truck parking nationwide. He's almost certain to introduce it again in the coming months. Meanwhile, you heard the congressman mention his colleague, Representative Mike Collins of Georgia, who took an opportunity to also talk about truck parking and tort reform.
This is a recent problem. This is not something that's been around forever. And when you look back on it, probably a decade, maybe a decade, 15 years ago, most of your parking by trucking companies were done at the shipper or the consignee. A lot of times that's where we stayed overnight. It not only helped give you a parking place at the dock, but it also helped with your hours of service. And I guess I want to focus the real problem and the real crux of the problem of why we don't park there anymore. We don't use those parking facilities. And I think you would probably agree to why I'm going to say this, but it's because of liability. And the fact that we are such a sue-crazy country now that if anything happens on anybody's facility other than say the side of the interstate, and that's not safe for the trucking company now, or rest areas, that everybody's going to get sued, no matter what happens. And the main reason, one of the reasons I came up here, and tort reform needs to be on the state level as well, but by God, we need tort reform in this country to help rectify a lot of this stuff.
We'll have more from Wednesday's hearing later on in the week. And finally, the Maryland Transportation Authority is warning the public about a text scam that's going around. Scammers are sending smishing texts to people, claiming the recipient owes money for unpaid tolls. The text messages look legit and appear like they're from Drive Easy MD, so be vigilant. Don't open links and certainly don't respond to one with a payment. Drive Easy MD will never request payment via text. Maryland is just the latest state to be targeted by these scammers. In recent months and years, other states have put out similar warnings. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. What do you do if you think a broker isn't paying you what they should? How do you figure out if they're hitting you with all kinds of unjustified fees? FMCSA has a proposal out right now that would do a lot to fix that. Make your comments at fightingfortruckers.com. Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, are at the Petro Truckstop in Henderson, Nevada. That's located at exit 15A on Interstate 11. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, we'll hear about a lawsuit over concealed carry permits. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truckstop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truckstop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Welcome back to Landline Now. The Liberty Justice Center recently filed a lawsuit against the Minnesota Department of Public Safety for failing to recognize firearm permits from other states, something known as reciprocity. The plaintiffs in this case are two truck drivers who say their constitutional right to bear arms in public and carry them in their trucks across state borders is being infringed upon. One of those plaintiffs is OOIDA member David McCoy, a long-haul trucker from Texas. We spoke with him and his attorney, Lauren C. Hayes of the Liberty Justice Center, about the case and its possible impact on the right to bear arms for people crossing state lines.
I've been driving on the road for 10 years now, and not just driving, but living in this truck, moving from truck to truck as I advance through the industry. I've probably got 500,000 safe miles under my belt, been to every state and every major city, and pulled every type of trailer except a cattle hauler.
And I think what you're saying there really does kind of factor into this bigger issue that we're talking about here with the lawsuit. You've got a Texas license to carry, if I understand correctly.
I have, yes.
For those who may not know out there, what does that mean specifically? Or I guess better yet, what is it supposed to mean in terms of, again, you're moving from state to state? What is that supposed to mean?
Supposed to mean in which state, and that's the exact problem that we're trying to address. To give you an example, in the state of Florida, if I show my gun, I go to jail. In the state of Washington, if I don't show my gun, if I cover it up in any way, I go to jail. In the state of Texas, it's just a license to carry a gun. It doesn't make any difference whether it's concealed or not. In certain other states, it does. It's an absolute spider web of rules and regulations that I've had to learn over the past 10 years and check and recheck every time I cross a state line.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to kind of follow up with you. The issue is not just confusion and not just complications, but we're talking about real legal problems if you get stopped in a state where it isn't recognized. And Lauren, from a legal standpoint, what we're really talking about here, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm obviously not an attorney, but this is a reciprocity issue by and large. Is that right? Or constitutional as well, but is that kind of where we're standing here?
Yes, so that's the exact issue, is the reciprocity. So we have these kind of constitutional underpinnings that we looked at when we thought about bringing this case, besides the Second Amendment. So you have your driver's license, and that's recognized by federal law across state lines. You have your birth certificate, your marriage license, that's recognized as valid across state lines. And we have case law that says, these are vital pieces of information for your identity, so they must be recognized. The old court cases said we can't have bastard kids in one state because you didn't recognize the marriage license. So we have that kind of these underpinnings, if you will, that go along with the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution. And the full faith and credit clause requires that each state recognize records from the state government and court orders and things like that. So this is similar in the sense that it's a license, from a state. It's lawfully issued, it's valid, it's current, and it should be recognized as such across the country. And the important thing of our lawsuit is the Second Amendment, and the analysis there. So we have our most recent Supreme Court case, the Bruin case from 2022, where the SCOTUS basically said that, hey, a law that infringes on the Second Amendment is going to be invalid unless there is a historical analog. So if historically we were restricting firearms, right to bear arms in that way, then the law today will be valid. So what we have to look at is back in 1791, at the time that the Second Amendment was ratified, were there laws that prevented out-of-state residents from carrying firearms across state lines? Were there laws that you had to, as a visitor, had to get permission from the visiting state prior to, traveling and say, hey, can I carry my firearm across state lines? And what I found was that not only was there not a historical analog, that there weren't laws prohibiting out-of-state residents from carrying firearms into other states, that instead there was actually laws on the books that required visitors, travelers to carry firearms. So that was very interesting to me.
There, I kind of look at this as being, there's two, I guess, buckets we can put this in. We're talking, obviously, Lauren, you're talking about the legal aspect of this. David, you're, dealing with this on a daily, weekly basis on a practical level, as you kind of explained there. Can you take me back to, I guess, the origin of the lawsuit here? I'm sure you didn't wake up on a random, Tuesday or Wednesday and think to yourself, you know what, I'd like to file a lawsuit against the state of Minnesota, because I'm having, these headaches that are kind of popping up. How did the issue kind of, I guess, first pop up for you? Was there a certain situation that happened, or how did we get to this point, I suppose, in this story here?
It was a Thursday that I woke up, not a Tuesday.
Not a random Tuesday or Wednesday. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it was a Thursday.
There you go.
No, that's it. That's exactly how it happened. I love freedom a whole lot, and so I got to thinking, this can't be constitutional. But I had to go and study the Constitution, I'm ashamed to say, to find out what was wrong with it, and that's when I came across full faith and credit, like she was talking about. And then I started calling around law firms and said, who will take my case? Because I can't really afford to go before the Supreme Court or any court at all.
Yeah. And so you made that phone call, and obviously the conversation continued. And did it become pretty apparent to you early on that there is something here, to pursue?
Once I understood the full faith and credit clause, yes, it became pretty apparent, and especially, like she said, in light of the Bruin case. And speaking of which, I just want to say how much I appreciate Liberty Justice Center, because I couldn't do any of this without them and their backing.
Yeah. Lauren, can you talk about that? I mean, maybe it was a random Friday, I don't know, or maybe it was a random Thursday as well. But, this case or this complaint came across your desk, I'm assuming at some point, obviously, because you're talking to us here. Was it pretty apparent to you pretty early on that there was something here that just wasn't right, that was worth pursuing?
Yeah, so I don't recall the day of the week that David gave me a call, but I had still have some Nebraska cases where we were challenging state preemption that dealt with firearm laws. So that's how David found our law firm and me, and specifically because I had brought these Nebraska cases. So he literally called me up and said, I have a case that I think you should take. And I think it's a Second Amendment, maybe privileges and immunities. I'm not sure. Can you take a look at it? And so I started taking a look at it, and I'm not in necessarily the Second Amendment field. And so I just started researching it and looking at it and realizing that there is something here. What is it? I'm not sure. It took me a little bit to look at the different constitutional arguments, because we did look at full faith and credit. We looked at privileges and immunities, the right to travel, because it seems to kind of affect all of those. We have these privileges and immunities where the old case law says, hey, you as American citizens have the right to travel from state to state. That's why we have the ability to freely move between the states, to be treated as a welcome visitor and not a hostile alien. Legal term. So we have those rights. And so when I started looking at it more closely, I realized that this was something that we should be looking into. So we took a little bit of time to kind of think through, where would we bring this type of a claim? Because his Texas license is recognized by some states. There are some states that right now do give reciprocity, but there's still a number of states that not only don't recognize the out-of-state permit, but some of them, there's no avenue forward, such as California and New York, to allow a non-resident to get a firearm permit. So in looking strategically, we did choose Minnesota because of its restrictions.
David, at the end of this, is it just as simple as, hey, I just want to be able to move freely from state to state and exercise my Second Amendment right? I mean, what is your end goal here? What are you hoping to get out of this?
My end goal personally in doing this is since I have standing as a truck driver, that's more obvious than most other citizens, I am going up against, I'm trying to create a circuit split with Minnesota saying yes and other cases that are currently in progress in New York and California saying no. I guess going back to your earlier question, that was what really got me to thinking when I saw that case in New York filed. I got to thinking, well, why can't that case be filed somewhere else? And then create a circuit split. Oh, here we go. And that's what spun out this whole idea.
Yeah.
So I think what you're trying to say is that your objective is to get the case to the U.S. Supreme Court so that we can get a decision with the Supreme Court saying that, yes, the Second Amendment right cannot be infringed, across state borders. Is that what you're trying to say?
And that's why you're paid the amount that you are.
Well, technically, we do all our cases pro bono at Liberty Justice, but yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, Lauren, that is, I guess, if you were to take this thing on down the road, this isn't just, a David McCoy issue. This is an issue for any American who wants to exercise that Second Amendment right from state to state. Is that right?
Precisely. So the way that you look at the laws, if you're just a family going on a camping trip and you've got your RV and you're traveling across the country and you're literally living in your RV, as you go across state lines, you may or may not be able to defend yourself and your family based on that state's laws. So it does affect millions of Americans as they travel, not just David, not just the trucking industry. It's a lot of Americans wanting to exercise their Second Amendment right. And really, there's no other rights that you have to ask the other state for permission to exercise. So if you're traveling across the country, you don't have to say, hey, I would like permission to speak my mind freely against the government. You don't have to ask permission for free speech. You don't have to ask for permission to exercise your religion. So this is the one kind of amendment where you have to ask permission before you can exercise it.
I've asked a lot of questions here. Is there anything I forgot to ask either of you that you might want to add here at the end, or, anything you want to let our listeners know about?
I guess I would say that to anybody who wants to know the ultimate reason why I'm not just bringing this lawsuit, but concerned about guns at all, is I think it was a quote from the Bonhoeffer movie. I'm not 100%, but it said, "Be a problem for evil." And as I understand it, when in that era of 1940s Germany, this pastor didn't want to fight because he's supposed to be a pastor. He's supposed to be a man of peace. And he came to understand that all it takes for evil to flourish is for good men to do nothing. And so it is my goal, after telling people about Jesus, to be a problem and a nuisance for evil. And that's the ultimate reason why I carry a gun, is not to be a problem or a nuisance or hurt any particular person, but to save lives and hinder evil.
Our thanks to OOIDA member David McCoy and Lauren C. Hayes for their time. We'll continue to follow the case, which, as the Liberty Justice Center points out, isn't just about the Second Amendment and reciprocity gaps, but also about self-defense and the protection of trailer cargo, which can be a prime target for criminals. It's also an issue that's on the mind of U.S. Congressman Richard Hudson of North Carolina, who recently introduced a bill that would provide nationwide reciprocity for concealed carry license holders like McCoy, his co-plaintiff Jeffrey Johnson, and countless others. For Landline Now, I'm Scott Thompson, and we're back right after this.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Landline Now, welcome back. Is using a factoring service a good idea? When should truckers consider using one, and what are the potential pitfalls? Here to offer some advice on that and more are Tom Crowley and Aron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, how are you doing?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good to be here, Mark, as always.
Glad to have you here. And obviously, this is a topic that is affecting a lot of people out there. But before we jump into the nitty-gritty, I always think of those people that are fairly new to the industry or haven't yet made the leap from working for a carrier to being a carrier, even leasing on. So for those folks, what is factoring? Give us kind of the Reader's Digest definition.
Well, factoring is essentially when you take your accounts receivable that will probably be on a 30 to 45 day pay cycle, and another company buys those from you for a few percentage points. They will buy those and then get you the money in a quicker time frame, usually within a few days or a week, depending on your arrangements. And it's just getting your money into your hands quicker, but everything's at a cost.
Why do people use this? I mean, obviously there's a reason they are. I know we've talked before about, how it's important for people to have enough money saved aside to really start a carrier. Is it just a matter of people not doing that?
Well, it's a matter of people not doing that, but it's really bigger than that. There are a lot of expenses in trucking, and to have enough money saved aside to start a trucking company and to get going, it's difficult. So a lot of folks, they're looking for a little easier way to do that rather than save all that money, because, like I said, that is difficult at times. And that's to employ a factoring service or someplace to buy your receivables and get you the cash up front. Here at the association, we are aware many small carriers factor. Sometimes it's inevitable that you will have to, but you don't want it to be an integral forever part of your business. I mean, if you have to do that at the beginning, to get things flowing, that's one thing. But you just want to look for an out, because that's 3 to 5, 8% of your income that's gone right off the top of the bat.
Well, and you mentioned in there that it's a good thing at the beginning, but we've talked about before the fact that once you're in, it's a little like the mafia. Once you're in, it's really hard to get out. Why is that?
Well, because your positioning on that lien is valuable. They don't want to release that right away, or they'll try to sweet talk you or prolong the issue to where that is. You have to understand that these factoring companies can see you coming, because if you're asking them, it's similar to a lease purchase. It's not necessarily predatory, but they see you coming from a mile away. If you're interested in that, they know why. Most people, when they get into the industry, can't wait 30 days, 45 days to get paid. That's where we see most of that come from. A lot of new carriers get into that. But, places that do this, those contracts are really, those contracts are
They're definitely binding. I mean, you get into these contracts and they are auto-renewing. Many of them, they'll run year to year and they auto-renew, and they've got a very small cancellation window or a window for exit. You've really got to read your contracts, and that's in the compliance department. We talk to people about this all the time. Read the contracts. I know you're a small business person, a truck driver. Contracts are not really your specialty. You need to know what they say, because you sign them, whether you understand them or not, you're bound by them. And factoring agreements there's some tough agreements. I mean, they get you in, they put a UCC, they file a UCC on your business through the Universal Commercial Code, and they have a lien on your business, as Aron was alluding to earlier. They have a lien on your business where all your accounts receivable must go to them. So know what you're getting into, and there are different factorings. There's factoring that they want to buy every paper that comes through. Of course, they want to approve it and then buy them. And there are others. There are what's called, say, spot factoring, where you can pick and choose a little bit about what you factor. Those are more far and few between. So know what you're getting into before you get in, because once you're in, it's not easy to get out.
Well, and keep in mind, too, a lot of times you're cross-collateralizing your assets, and you're also sometimes signing over power of attorney. I've seen those in contracts, too. So you're signing up for more than you think. And if things go left, or if there's a reason why you want to get out of the contract and you, for some reason, have a payment discrepancy where you owe them money or have any outstanding balances, that's hurtful. And keep in mind what Tom was saying earlier about that lien against your business. If grandma dies and there's a payment discrepancy, let's say she left you $50,000 and you supposedly owe them $5,000, they get that money first before you get anything. That's how deep it can go.
You mentioned that cross-collateralizing, and I want to explore that a little bit more because as I recall, it involves like if you have a load that you factored, they paid you, but then the shipper doesn't pay them, they basically got a right to take that money out of your next load, right?
That is a form they can do, or they can take it directly out of your bank account.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you want to be careful of. People they get real comfortable with this electronic banking. And some of these contracts that you sign, not only do you give them the ability to put money into your account, but I've seen it stated where if you owe them money, they have every right to take that money out of your account. So, and then cross-collateralization, absolutely. If you have money coming in from a load and they pay you in advance for that load, and for whatever reason, be it a claim, be it a misunderstanding, it doesn't matter, that factoring company doesn't get paid on that, they will want that money back. And that's called the
non-recourse, right?
Thank you. Non-recourse.
Yeah.
I was having problems with that one. The recourse and the non-recourse. And that is one thing that you really need to understand in these contracts, because essentially everything is recourse. Everything does come back on you at some point. They say, hey, this is a non-recourse. We're going to charge you an extra percentage point, and then it'll be non-recourse. Read that contract. It doesn't really come out like that. Essentially, if they don't get paid, they're coming back to you for that money.
Yeah, that factoring company does play your middleman and does, a lot of your back office and invoicing depending on what that contract says. But keep in mind, they're never going to take a loss on your behalf. They're always going to collect that because that percentage you're giving them is not going to offset that $2,000 load they didn't get paid on or more.
Yeah, and a lot of these factoring companies, they have websites that you can go and do a credit check on these brokers, and you better do that, because if you don't do that, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get paid. So, some of these factoring sites, they do offer some benefits that a small carrier can capitalize on, but there's a lot of pitfalls there too. So you've got to know the full, aspect of what they and you are expected to do.
I want to kind of skip back just a little bit here, talking about the UCC, talking about cross-collateralizing. And I'm sure, I know there have been people that thought this. I'm sure there are people thinking it, hearing this now, which is once you are in, how do you get out? Once you are locked into that arrangement?
Well, a lot of times per the contract, you have to sign paperwork and submit that to them, explaining that you want out of the contract, your resignation of that within a certain time frame, and you have to send it certified mail. Sometimes there is a monetary value attached to that too. It could be $1,000, $2,000, could be $200. It will all be dictated in the terms and agreement of that contract. As far as you hold up your end, what happens on their end, I've seen a lot of times people call in and they say, they keep prolonging. They're not answering my call. They're playing, back and forth with me, things of that nature. Another thing you can attempt to do is try, in some states, you can go try to remove it yourself as well. But that notice of assignment's still out with those brokers. So sometimes those brokers are going to want written confirmation from that factoring company that you guys have separated, and getting that, what do they give to you, that,
when you satisfy
that
everything,
letter release,
the UCC release,
the release,
UCC 3.
They want a copy of that UCC 3, and sometimes they want it written from them as well, not just because you got it.
Yeah, and that it really comes down to, as we discussed before, read that contract and understand what it says. Don't call the factoring company up and say, hey, how do I do this? Or what does it take to get out or something? Because, they're there's not a lot of benefit for them to tell you. It's more beneficial for you to read that contract because, they may omit something or say, well, you got to send in a letter, but they won't tell you exactly when to send it in. I mean, that's up to you to know. You signed the contract. And if you don't send that letter in right during that little window that you have opportunity for, then they will automatically renew you. And I've seen it over and over again. They'll renew you and say, tough, you're in for a year.
That's a real situation there. When we're talking about factoring, and going back to those truckers that may want to use it, especially newer carriers that don't have a bunch of savings they can rely on, are there alternatives to factoring for those truckers? Is there any other place where they can would a line of credit at a bank work, for example?
It would. That would be something they would have much more control over as well. A line of credit at a bank. There are some brokers that have a quick pay option.
Not all, but some.
And it'll still cost you 1% or 2%, but at least that's on a per issue basis. It's these long-term contracts that you get locked into. That's where a lot of the downfall comes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would suggest, read those contracts, but when you're getting into trucking, make sure you have that flow of money coming in to or that savings before you even start, because we know it takes insurance payments and truck payments, all these other things. And for you to pay to someone to do all your paperwork for you, that kind of takes the onus off of you for being a business owner. And at the end of the day, no one's going to care more about your business than you. So I suggest have a couple $1,000 or $20,000 or whatever the case is, sit to the side. That way you can, outlast that first month and wait for those payments. Learn how to file on a bond if someone's late. Learn how to run your business yourself. That way you don't have to pay someone to help you invoice and run your business. It's all about being a business owner. If you're going to have everyone dictate and do all your permits and everything like that, I don't necessarily suggest maybe you be a business owner in the first place. It's okay sometimes to just be an owner-operator for a carrier or an employee driver.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot
nothing
of times,
wrong with that.
There's a lot of times that we see folks that come in and they want to outsource everything. And it's like, well, why are you going to run a business? I mean, if you're going to outsource it all, there's just not enough money to pay everybody to do your job.
And I think there are things that can be outsourced that maybe it's a good idea, but you got to be picky about that.
You do. You got
to be willing to learn too how to do it. It's okay to have someone do it once or twice, but at some point pick it up yourself. Do some research, ask questions, learn how to do it yourself. That way you're not paying a factoring company for the next 20 years.
I agree.
Hell of a thing there, guys.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all the information, guys. Thank you very much for joining me, and maybe we'll have you back to talk about this some more sometime.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
I've been talking with Tom Crowley and Aron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And folks, if you need help, if you need information, if you have questions about this, call Compliance. That's what they're there for. They're there to help you. The phone number to do that is the main number here at OOIDA, 816-229-5791. Again, 816-229-5791. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now. Welcome back. If you're hauling freight and running your own business, you need to keep track of some basic facts and figures that can determine whether you succeed or fail. And that includes finding the freight and how much money you can make hauling it. Today, Landline Now's Ashley Blackford will bring us some of that information and get some insight as to why things are happening with the folks from Truckstop.com. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Brent Hutto with Truckstop. How are you doing today, Brent?
Well, Ash, I'm doing great. I just love the fact that you get my last name correct. Like, you nail it every single time, and I'm just so thankful for that because most people really brutalize it. But you've always gotten it right, so I'm so appreciative of you.
All right.
Yeah, man.
Let's take a look at current market conditions. What are things looking like?
Yeah, well, fantastic. My theme this week is Ed Sheeran Shivers. I love the guy, such a talent, but it's freezing everywhere else. In Alabama, when it gets below 40, we freeze here. So it's been in the 20s, and we even had snow, and which is kind of nice. It lasted for more than a day. But here's the thing. I use that word because even though it's kind of cold in the United States, rates are going to continue to heat up all year long. So if you're an owner-operator listening to this program today, you operate 1 to 10 trucks, start negotiating for higher rates today. Start putting pressure on the providers, the transportation, whether you deal with brokers or shippers. Start pushing back because the market's going to heat up all so my theme of today, just really start to focus on that. And it helps you, if you're an owner-operator, to know your numbers. And I don't mean you got to be an expert. I'm just saying the information that we put out for free at Truckstop and people put out for free, you guys put out for free at Landline and OOIDA, know your data, know your operations, because, man, you can really start to maximize because rates are going to continue to go up all year long. So the pressure in the marketplace went crazy because it always does right after the holidays. One of the cool things was that the rates went up during the holidays, and they didn't come down the week after the holidays were over, which is last week. And so that's a really unique thing. Rates themselves have been around 234, 233. And so that's really good when you look at it from a standpoint of kind of where we are, where inflation is, where everything else is. And here's why. So on the van marketplace, week to week, rates went up 2 cents. Well, why is that important? Okay, well, it's important because it was at 220. Last year, on week 1, van rates were 213. We're 7 cents above that. Last time I checked, depending on your efficiency, extra 7 cents is just profit in your pocket, right? So same thing. Flatbed's been kind of the same. It doesn't change much during the holidays because that's more industrial building stuff, people that are making things to build other things. But refrigerated has been crazy. In 4 weeks, it's gone up 30 cents. 30 cents. That's a lot of, as Jeff Spicoli from Fast Times Ridgemont High would say, that's a lot of buku dollars in your pocket if you're hauling reefer. That's a really cool thing. Fuel has gone up 2 cents over the last couple of weeks, which, that's going to bump back and forth. But with the new administration and the inauguration happen next week, the first thing that the President Trump said he was going to do so watch for energy prices to go down over the first, not the first quarter, but probably second, third, fourth quarter, they'll start to go down. But the outbound tender reject index, Ash, is the big encouraging thing. So that's the contract freight. For those that might be listening to this program the first time, that's contract rates. And that's the freight that's rejected by these big contract fleets that are out there, that some of that goes in the spot market. Well, for 15 straight weeks, it's been above the normal. It's normal's 5%. If it's below 5%, fleets are taking a lot of the freight. Freights in the spot market won't go up. But when it's above 5%, rates will go up. To give you an idea, the outbound tender reject index in the middle of the pandemic was 25. So 25% of contract rate was being rejected. You can imagine that number. So, but here's the thing. 2 weeks ago, it was 6.94. Last week, it was 8. And that's really promising for owner-operators. So that's why I'm optimistic about things, because we see all of the indicators that are saying we're going to have a better rate market in 2025 than we had in 2024, which was a 16% better rate market than it was in 2023. So what does all that mean? I'll quote Jeff Spicoli again. More buku dollars, more money in your pocket if you're willing to negotiate and if you know your numbers.
What are some of the top regions and lanes from last week?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. It's always important to know trucking is a national product, and you as a truck driver can, providing you have your licensing and everything, you can haul in any state. So you got to look around areas. I'm not going to look at load availability because it went up like crazy. It went up like 16% week to week. Okay, so it's about 15% above its 5-year average. So there's plenty of freight in the marketplace. What I'm looking at is rates. So rates from the West Coast decreased about 5%, but in the Midwest, they're at 250, they're at 234. That's kind of like the Midwest and South Central right now are kind of the better rate marketplaces. But my point, though, is that overall rates continue to modulate up. Remember, as you and I have talked about, and we want to make sure every owner-operator knows this, the rates you see on Truckstop or any other load board are just basically the market available rates. You should be negotiating much higher than this if you know your market conditions, if you know how many trucks are in a market or how many people you're competing against, if you know what's being moved, what day of the week it is. Always negotiate for higher rates. And it really, you can always negotiate for higher rates if you have a better relationship with people. You and I have talked about that many times. Some of the areas that you might want to look at, I'm going to go back to this. You and I, Ash, have been beating this drum for a while. Texas is a great marketplace. It's going to continue to be a great marketplace because of the freight that's going to be coming in from Mexico, going into the United States, whether it's a manufacturer or whether it's an end seller of a product. Why do I know that? Well, follow the money. Look at what these giant brokers and these giant carriers are doing in and around the border towns. And they are investing into warehousing. They're investing into more availability and capacity in those areas because that freight's going to continue to come in. It's going to continue to increase. Don't pay a lot of attention to the tariffs that the new administration is going to talk about to Mexico and to Canada because we need those. Those are our friend partners. That's more of a leverage point to try to change a different behavior from a standpoint of what's going on with drugs and immigration. So the freight will still flow, but look at Texas, whether you're a van, flatbed, or reefer, you can do well. Now, if you don't want to go there, look in the marketplaces where you see increases year over year. The mid states, the western states are doing well. Denver, your town of Kansas, your sister town of Kansas City, Detroit's even doing well. But I'll tell you, the more I look at it, it's always Texas, Laredo, Dallas, Houston, all those cities are doing super well.
What are some important industry points that owner-operators should know and be aware of?
Yeah. Let's go back I'm going to go back to rates again. As I said, that's a theme in the beginning. Here's the guy. You got to trust your gut. Like, you're a truck driver. You've been doing this. You're fantastic at what you do. You're world-class at operating a truck. But you may not be world-class at analyzing data and look at market data and those sort of things. You depend on people like OOIDA and Truckstop. And we even depend on people. We depend on a great group out of Indianapolis called FTR Intelligence. They've been around for like 35 years, 40 years in the marketplace, and they're really good at forecasting a marketplace. In other words, they're kind of really the only forecasting group inside of transportation. So Avery Weiss is their leader of the trucking and freight department, or he's the vice president of freight there, and he does a fantastic job. He's my old friend. I used to work with him on CCJ Magazine, and he's really good at looking at what's the marketplace going to do. Well, I sent you a nice little chart you can look at, and you're welcome to post this online if you want to. What do the rates look like for next year? Well, the first few months are just modulating back and forth between up a little bit, down just a tiny little bit. But once we hit second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, they look to be projecting to increase because that's when all the bids already work out with all the big players, which means spot market rates are going to come up even more. We had as I mentioned, we had a 16% increase in 2024 from 2023. My thought, and this is just me spitballing and guessing here, is we'll have a bigger increase over the year for spot market rates because they kind of need to come up. So just look for better rates. My point is start negotiating now with people because this is a year-long process, right? So second thing is there's different types of hauls, and this is really cool. Just found this out from our chief economist, Noah Perry. Look, I know everybody wants to haul long haul because I got to get the miles, but you can string together some short hauls and regional hauls that pay a lot more. And here's the thing. This just came out on FreightWaves that the truckload marketplace had the short haul is up 13% year over year. So I just say it's important to know your market. Just so find out where you can continue to make those profits and continue to be the best truckers in America.
Wonderful. Brent, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, I love talking to you, Ashley. Thanks for what you do to help the industry.
That was Brent Hutto with Truckstop. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a
professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.